Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. I decided to do my intro like this again as it is easier this way. I'm also doing it this way because I noticed in my last video that I made that the video I made of myself talking ended up being way quieter than the actual audio of the review, which is rather inconsistent. I still haven't been able to afford a new camera stand so that I can film myself the way I want to. Anyway, on to what I'm talking about in my review. Peter David, who was a Hulk writer, sadly passed away earlier this year, and I have been wanting to talk about one of my favorite comic stories he wrote. It was the Grey Hulk saga that was told from Incredible Hulk number 324 in 1986 to Incredible Hulk number 378 in 1991. To understand this, though, we have to go back to the very first ever Incredible Hulk comic by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. I briefly talked about it in my video before last, but in that comic, after being exposed to gamma rays via a radioactive bomb because of Rick Jones driving onto the bomb site after being dared by his friends to do so, Banner turns into the Grey Hulk at night. The reason why his skin color was changed to green in the very next issue was that in 1962, when the comic was made, the color gray did not print very well. In Stan Lee's own words, on some pages he was light gray, on some pages he was dark gray, on some pages he was almost black, but they had no choice but to print the comic off with the inconsistent gray colored Hulk. The Hulk was also more intelligent in that first comic too. The transformation at night would last till Incredible Hulk number 4, when Rick Jones and Bruce Banner went to a secret cave in the desert where he has a machine that he can shoot gamma rays out with. Bruce Banner wants to use it to take control of his Hulk form. He shows Rick how to operate it. He succeeds in taking over his Hulk form until the next issue, when he loses control of his Hulk form. And that is when the furious Hulk Smash Hulk, otherwise known as Savage Hulk, was created. Also, the secret cave with that machine would be in later Hulk comics. Something else I need to mention is that a few years before Peter David took over writing Hulk, Hulk writer Bill Mantlo, who I mentioned way back in my Incredible Hulk number 271 review, decided that Bruce Banner suffers from a dissociative identity disorder because of being abused by his dad as a kid. The blue monster and tan elf here represent his different personalities he has. This is why the 2003 Hulk film had his father as the main villain. But unlike that movie, his father had actually died well before he became the Hulk in the comics. But Mantlo decided that his dad's abuse toward him made him have that disorder, and that it was mostly dormant in his mind till the radioactive bomb accident, which made it take over when he turned into the Hulk. I'm sorry if this is all too weird for some of you. I admit, I am not a fan of the story of his dad being abusive, nor of the Hulk being an alternate personality of Bruce because of it. Anyway, in Incredible Hulk number 324, Hulk, who had been trapped by the army and Doc Samson, breaks free of his bonds and ends up unintentionally jumping into a chemical bath created by Doc Samson. Doc Samson is a longtime Hulk character who I will talk about more at some point next year. Anyway, the Hulk turns gray and then turns back into Bruce Banner. Something else I forgot to mention is when Hulk jumped into it, Rick Jones was pushed into the chemical bath by General Ross, who was trying to sabotage Banner's cure because he still resents him. Because of this, Rick Jones became the Green Hulk after this, but later it's revealed that Banner didn't cure himself and went back to the original transformation at night into the Grey Hulk. So, to make a long story short, too late, After surviving a nuclear bomb on a town caused by the longtime Hulk villain, the Leader, the Grey Hulk goes to Las Vegas, Nevada, where he works as a bouncer in a casino. But then he gets fired from that job, and that is where we are with the Grey Hulk in this comic. So let's look at Incredible Hulk number 378 and see how this Hulk comic set at Christmas goes. This cover is pretty good, but some of you might think it's offensive that Hulk is fighting against someone dressed as Santa Claus. Spoiler, the guy dressed as Santa Claus on this cover is the supervillain, the Rhino. He was actually a Hulk villain in the far past. Some of you know him from Spider-Man cartoons and the horrible adaptation of him in Amazing Spider-Man 2 as being a Spider-Man villain. Personally, I prefer him as a Hulk villain. I find it more entertaining when he is fighting against the Hulk. Most of the time in Spider-Man comics, cartoons, and video games, Spider-Man just jumps out of his way and wears him down by making him crash into things. It's just that I like him better as a Hulk antagonist because with Spider-Man, he easily gets beaten. Like, Spider-Man doesn't have that hard of a time beating him. And some might think the Hulk is able to beat him too well, but I don't know. I just kind of like brawn versus smartness versus brawn, which is entertaining but not as good. The art on this comic, by the way, is by Bill Jaska, who I admit I am not familiar with. The art by him in this comic is good, though. This cover is really good, by the way, and it does draw the reader into wanting to see what's going on in the comic. The comic starts off with this immature boy sticking his tongue out at this African American boy just to be obnoxious to him. I'm with the African American boy. I'd like him to shut up and stop being obnoxious too. Then Rick Jones comes into this orphanage or shelter for kids to see them. Rick then tells them a story about the Hulk when he was gray. We see the Rhino on this next page, and he is sad, as you can see. He walks up to these homeless guys and asks if he can stand by their fire with them. Unfortunately, they get scared and run away. He then complains about being stuck in his Rhino suit, about not having a job or money, and also rants about how other supervillains only want to talk about superheroes. Then we cut to the homeless people running out of the alley. One of them says, "Run! Run! Before the ugly gray monster comes after us!" Then they run into the Grey Hulk. And I'm going to read the dialogue in the voice of how he sounded in the 2003 Hulk video game that was a sequel to the movie. "I resent that remark." Then a car pulls up and picks up Hulk. The driver asks what those homeless guys were shouting about, and Hulk responds, "Oh, bums like that see two of everything." We cut to Rhino, who is complaining about how he can't do anything as long as the Hulk is in town. Rhino then walks up to some shops and sees a guy dressed as Santa Claus collecting for charity. He gets an idea. He knocks out the guy when he goes into an alley and steals his Santa suit and beard. Then he goes back to the donation container and asks people to donate. He asks this guy who claims he ran into Nick Fury and Hydra to donate. He says he already did. Then he grabs the guy and demands he give again. Someone would get freaked out and give him some more money, then run away. Then a guy comes up to him and ends up offering him a job as Santa Claus because their Santa has gotten drunk and hurt himself. Oh, the early 90s when that was considered funny. Anyway, he goes to sit down in the Santa chair, but due to having superhuman strength, he can't control it. He breaks it. So they make him one out of concrete. Then this kid sits on his lap and tells him he wants a bunch of Marvel and DC action figures, complete with secret hideouts. Then Rhino asks him if he'd like any villain action figures, to which he says he doesn't need any because all the villains do is get beat. This makes Rhino angry, and then he picks him up with his hand, and the kid then feels the horn through his hat and says he is the Rhino. The Rhino then threatens him not to tell anyone. The kid leaves, and his mom misunderstands what he means when he says the Santa Claus was Rhino. She tells him he can't have any pet animals, including a pony. Then another kid gets on Santa's lap, saying he wants an NES, a Turtles game, a bike, and then before he can say what else he wants, Rhino gets angry at him and tells him he shouldn't demand those things. Says that he should work and get them for himself that way, to make a name for himself. The man who asks him off the street comes up really upset. I realize now that the guy from earlier claiming to have met Nick Fury is S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Quartermaine. He was a supporting character in Hulk comics from 1986 to 1991. Anyway, Quartermaine says to Rick Jones that the guy seems suspicious and wants to check him out. Rick asks where Banner is, because it is almost sunset. In the next panel, Banner has become the Greyhawk while using the bathroom. He scares a guy in the next stall who was banging on the stall he was using. Greyhawk says, "All yours," as he has broke the door off. Then we cut to Rhino, who has a naughty kid saying he's a crummy Santa, and then pulls his beard off. Then the kid recognizes he's a supervillain and starts yelling at him that he and all supervillains are stupid and ugly. This makes Rhino go berserk. He picks up the kid insulting him and throws him several feet away. The Greyhawk catches the kid. The Greyhawk says, "Step aside, kid." The boy replies, "Who are you?" To which the Greyhawk responds, "The spirit of fractures yet to come." The Rhino comes charging at Hulk, saying, "That voice! That face!" The Greyhawk responds, "You forgot those lips, those eyes." Then Rhino says, "It's the Hulk, swiping my color scheme." After being knocked down by the Rhino, the Greyhawk says, "Alright, hotshot, you may be dumb and ugly, but this time you've met your match." Some kids are looking at the stars outside the store and debating on if they see the planet Jupiter. There is a picture of Spider-Man on the store window. I wonder what J. Jonah Jameson thinks about people selling Spider-Man merchandise. He probably hates it. Anyway, then Greyhawk says to Rhino, "Yeah, well, you are not at the top of my Christmas card list either." Hulk then has thrown Rhino out the store window. Rhino says, "I hate you!" Someone comes up to them and says, "Excuse me, I'm making a bid to end this right now." Turns out it is a young woman. She says, "Hi, I'm Donna Sargis. Exquisite cookies. Our motto is, we got your cookies right here. Instead of fighting, why not try these delicious chocolate chip cookies?" Rhino eats one. He says, "Are these macadamia nuts?" She says, "Why, yes." He says, "I hate macadamia nuts!" Then throws the tray out of her hands. Greyhawk says, "Move it, lady!" Then the woman says, "Steven, get me out of here!" Then Rhino reacts to Greyhawk kicking him by saying, "Hey, no fair, kicking!" To which Greyhawk responds, "Everything's fair in love and war, jerkweed. And I just love to make war." Then Greyhawk has made him fall off the platform they were on and is pushing him towards the ground. Rhino says, "Get off me, you hear? Getting punched in the face by you is not my idea of how to spend the holidays." The Greyhawk lands on some bowling balls in a store. Rhino comes jumping down, yelling, "How about that? You're not so tough. Anyone with half a brain can see that. Admit it, you can't handle me." But Greyhawk responds, "Mister, anyone this side of Woody Allen could handle you. All it takes is plenty of balls." Rhino then slips on the balls that Hulk rolled next to him. Then we cut to outside the sports store where Rick Jones and Quartermain are. Quartermain has spotted them. The Rhino has been thrown through the window towards them. Quartermain pulls out his gun and tells Rhino he is a SHIELD agent and that he's under arrest. Rhino yells that he's never killed a SHIELD agent and whacks the gun out of his hands. Then the Grey Hulk taps Rhino on the shoulder. Turns out Grey Hulk has a Santa beard and hat on. He yells, "Ho, ho, ho!" and then punches the Rhino. The Grey Hulk says, "You've been a very bad dimwit this year. Santa's going to have to turn you into Christmas mulch." Rhino responds, "Shut up! I liked you better when you had a 10-word vocabulary." Grey Hulk responds, "What's your problem anyway?" Rhino says, "I can't ever take this stupid Rhino costume off." Then Grey Hulk says, "So, you women and..." Rhino cuts him off. "Don't you think I know that? Why do you think I'm so irritable?" Now Hulk has thrown Rhino into a room where a woman and her boy are. Hulk lets out a groan and Rhino says, "I did it! My horn penetrated." Rhino then starts to put the Santa beard and hat on again and says, "See? You see? I tried to do something decent, tried to be nice, but they didn't want that. They wanted this instead. They wanted..." Then this little girl comes up. She is crying. She says, "Santa, Santa, why are you hurting this gray man? I thought you were good. I thought you were supposed to help people. My mom said you really were Santa, but you aren't. Maybe there isn't a Santa Claus at all and Mommy lied." Then Rhino looks at the girl and says, well, your mother was, she was telling the truth." Grey Hulk says, "Huh?" Then Rhino says, "You see, the Grey Hulk says, naughty?" Then Rhino says, "Yeah, naughty. But now he's gonna be, and Grey Hulk responds, "Nice?" Then Rhino says, "Yeah, that's it." Grey Hulk then says, "We're both gonna be nice, watch." Then the girl's mom comes up to her and tells her to get away from Grey Hulk and Rhino. Then Rick starts to say, "Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus," but Rhino and Hulk tell him to shut up. So Rhino and Grey Hulk cooperate with each other, and Rhino finishes his shift as Santa Claus. And Hulk gets a woman to dance with him. The less you think about that, the better. Then we cut back to Rick and the kids, where the African American kid kicks Rick and tells him he's a liar. Then Rick says he'd rather go to some supervillains where it's safe, with the closing narration saying, "Merry Christmas." This comic is pretty good. The art is good, and I like how at the end the Rhino and Hulk settle their differences without fighting in order to let a girl have her belief in Santa Claus. I want to go ahead and say, in the very next issue, Doc Samson gives Hulk a bunch of therapy so that Banner can take control of his Hulk form, and he succeeds in doing so. Sadly for myself, Banner-controlled Hulk lasted from the next issue after this all the way to the early 2000s, over 10 years later. Grey Hulk would only come back for a few panels in a comic in the early 2000s where Banner's different Hulk personas take over his body. I know, comics are weird, and well before this it turned out Banner suffered multiple personality disorders, as I said before. But we'll talk about that another time. Next time, I am listing all the mistakes I made over the year. See you then.